And we're live. I'm here with the Borough President of Brooklyn, Mr. Eric Adams. Thank you so much for taking the time. You are amply busy, and for you to take time out of your day really means the world to me, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here. And really, podcasts have just started to change how we talk. And it allows you to go in depth and really learn people and not just through sound bites. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
And I think especially, just to have the conversational feel, there's no agenda. And I think, especially in the political world, that's especially important. And also, before I even get into it, for me personally, this is just a big moment because I was born and raised in Brooklyn. So to have you on means a lot to me. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I told you a few seconds ago, the first thing that I like to do with every guest is see if there's a little tidbit, a little story, a little fact. You've done a bunch of interviews over your time. Is there a little something that the world doesn't know about the Borough President?
Well, I think that we all wear masks throughout the day, and from time to time, people can peek through them. And probably one of my significant moments, something that I always reflect on during my darkest days, is it was important to me when my son was born that I was the first one to physically touch him outside of him being in his mother's womb. I remember sitting inside the delivery room, and the doctor had it all coordinated. And, she says, you can watch, but you can't intercede at all. And when I saw his head was coming out of his mother's womb, and the doctor reached for it, I grabbed her hand and I touched the tip of his head. I said, now you can finish the job.
Wow. And you've always remembered that?
My darkest days, when I'm going through a lot of despair, I'll just sit down and close my eyes and remember how it felt, feeling the top of his head and feeling that life come into the universe. Even before he took his first breath, his dad touched him.
And we describe that emotion that you felt from that moment that you think about all the time?
All the time, and sometimes you're on this journey and you could be beat down so much. You wonder while you're here and while you're doing what you do. And when I go into a meditation, I meditate in the morning, I meditate in the evening. And that is part of the image that I think about and how powerful it is to watch life come into the universe. And I'm just in this constant state of giving life to something. And the most important life I gave was, that drop of sperm that created a young man that is in his mid-20s now. And it's just how we can continue to give birth to new ideas.
That's beautiful. And so, talking about that meditation that you do, I think you do every day?
Every day, twice a day. One in the morning when I wake up and once before I go to bed.
What does meditation look like for you?
And that's a very good question, because oftentimes people are caught up in this, ooh,
Yeah.
And it's not. It is about just allowing your brain to get out of the fright and flight stage that we are in all the time. We are hardwired to run from lions, tigers, and bears. The lion, tigers, and bears of yesteryears are now the interaction with our spouses, the interaction with our boss, someone cutting us off on the road. Our body is not meant and built to be revved up all the time. And so meditation to me is the opportunity to, when we're not revved up, when we're not running from the lion, tigers, and bears, we are in a healing place. And meditation is my healing moment. Just as my physical body is healed, I believe our spirit has an anatomy, and that spiritual anatomy needs to be healed also. And so when I meditate, I'm not only healing my body, allowing the blood to flow right, allowing for my vital organs to be healed, but I'm also healing the anatomy of my spirit. I'm bringing myself back to the oneness and the peacefulness, my universal connection to the universe, because we don't believe we're connected. There was an amazing experiment done in Geneva several years ago, sometimes in the 90s, where they took two pieces of matter and divided it into two and made it 7 miles apart. They impacted one piece of matter, and instantaneously the other piece was impacted also. So it doesn't matter if I came from my mother's womb and you came from your mother's womb. We're universally connected. There's nothing you can do to me that in some way is not going to impact you. You may not see it, but in this universal impact, we are all connected. We're connected to the plants, the animals, the human experience. And so meditation to me is to tap into that connection and become conscious of the universal connection.
And what do you physically do when you're meditating? What does that look like? Do you sit in a dark room? I mean, I've had a lot of different guests that talk about a variety of different ways to meditate.
Because there is a variety of ways to go internally in oneness. I particularly will sit down on the floor, cross my legs. I like quiet. Sometimes I do it to music because I love Middle Eastern music. I think in one of my lives I was Middle Eastern because it calls me. But I like to just quietly sit down. Sometimes I have a mantra, something I would say over and over again, and just allow myself just to focus on the presence. I would feel my body. I'll feel my hands, my feet. I'll feel my breathing to become conscious of my breathing. Then I'll just fall into a state of just complete relaxation.
And does your meditation in the morning look different than your meditation at night?
No, same
thing.
Same thing. Same method that I do, and it's just consistent. Doesn't matter if it's the morning or night. Sometimes I do it in the middle of the day.
Okay.
Sometimes I will go through a traumatic experience or feel something that's traumatic, and I would just take a moment, tell my staff, listen, I'm just going to just sit down for a while and just go through some form of meditation during the day. Or sometimes I'm at the sink washing dishes, and I allow myself to be conscious of the water, the soap, the moving the plate. It's just not having my mind all over the place, I can be walking somewhere in a park and I'm conscious of the walking. My feet, they are touching the ground. And I think that's, to me, the most significant part of the meditation is being present. We fear the future and we hate the past. We spend our lives divided in those two places. So you have to ask, when are we in the present?
Right.
And so we need to take moment, be in the present. And that's asking me all the time that, hey, Eric, what do you want to do later? Are you going to try to run from a city hall? This is like an alchemist moment for me. I don't focus on the destination. It's the journey. We get so caught up on the destination. There was a prominent Jewish leader in this city. He fought for a decade to get he's part of one of the great members of his city communities. He had a piece of land that he was trying to rezone to be able to build housing on. And he fought for decades to get this done. He had so many battles and fights. And finally, he was able to get it done. And he had a great deal that was going to happen for hundreds of millions of dollars. He went to Florida to visit his family, celebrated, went into the ocean to swim, got caught up in a riptide and died. Imagine all those years that were wasted. We spend all that time of just saying, if I get this promotion, if I get this job, if I become this, if I become that. No, enjoy this moment.
Now, how do you as a leader, especially with everything going on and, in the midst of a pandemic where, the people of Brooklyn looked to people like you, how do you stay present while also needing to help people in the future, really?
And that's a great question, because you cannot imagine how much we are inundated, because people are in so much pain and they don't even realize they're in pain. And they would stop me on the street. They would see me on the subway. They would see me riding my bike. They just, I would sit down and talk because, much of our communications is not verbal.
Right. Yeah.
And so someone can talk to you and say, I'm all right. But if you really observe, you'll see that people are hurting.
Yeah.
There used to be an old soulful ballad. If you take a close look at my face, you'll see my smile is out of place and the tracks of my tears. And what I must do is, while I'm interacting with people with so much pain, housing, health, children arrested, going through domestic violence, living in a homeless shelter, I must become conscious of their moment, but at the same time, I'm not good to anyone if I'm not good to myself. And I always keep the focus on, you must stay centered, because my day disaligns my spirit. And just like a chiropractor will realign your back when you're disaligned, meditation helps me realign my spirit from all of the pain and abuse that it receives during the day.
And have you been able to, over the past really 3 months, have even a second to take in what's going on? I mean, this is some of the most chaotic times really in our lifetimes, really. And, in a position, especially you in a position of power, have you had just a second? I mean, and then, we have pandemic and then all the, race relations stuff going on. Have you had just a second to take it all in, or?
More than a second, more
Okay.
than a second. It has been very fast, very inundated atmosphere. But just as we would drink water because our body needs it, just as we would eat food because our body needs it, I meditate because my body needs it. It's not an option. It's not an option.
And you said something really, really interesting in an interview. Well, the first interesting part of this is that you've been sleeping in your office for a while. Do you still do that?
Yes.
Still do that.
I would love to see us cycle out of this because man can't live on bread alone. And I love some human interaction. Was that creative?
Yeah, that was beautiful. I mean, the way I think a lot of the way you say is very poetic. But you said something interesting in an interview. Is you said the president has Air Force One. I have I think.
I have Borough Hall one.
I have Borough Hall or 209, whatever.
209,
Exactly.
Geralman one.
But I think that's, first, that's something that for me, like I just looking up to a leader and someone who represents where I live, that's so powerful for me. Especially in a time where a lot of us feel like the man in the White House is really not doing. I mean, whatever. We're not going to even get into that right now. You know what I mean? Like,
it's another show, right?
We could do like 6 episodes on that. But you know what I mean? It's beautiful to see at least people on a more local level really care. And that I think was such a powerful decision for you to sleep in your office and show people, we're in a crisis. I'm here with you guys.
Mm-hmm.
For you, what's that experience been like? Not just actually sleeping in the office, but your interactions with people, and has that in a lot of ways grounded you more? Do you feel like you've been able to do more of what you've wanted to do? I mean, kind of take me through this experience.
That is you're dead on, and I didn't know that this was going to happen this way. This caught us all off guard, and I remembered when we cut the staff loose to have them go home and do their job, telecommute. I remember instantly came in my mind September 11th and how when I slept in the precinct after doing 12-hour tours, it kept me in the right frame of mind because we didn't know if terrorism was coming back. We were all afraid. We were all on high alert. And I saw that by sleeping in the precinct, I was able to just stay where I needed to be mentally. I wasn't bringing home trauma to my family. I was at the right frame of mind that, listen, we're in battle. Let's keep ourselves here. And that immediately came to mind when we shut down the city and we divided the city. And that's another conversation, how we divided the city. We basically said in the city of New York that some New Yorkers, their lives are more important than others. And I said, how do I tell the train operator to go out and ride the trains, the Uber delivery person, the school safety agent, the 911 operator, the doctors and nurses? How do I tell them, you go out in harm's way? And remember, we didn't have PPEs for a lot back then. And you don't have food, you don't have childcare. How do I tell you to do that? And then I go home. Yeah. That's just not, leaders, generals lead their troops into battle. They don't send them in and say, how was the war? And so my presence as the borough president, it was unbelievable, the moments of sometimes I would go out to the schools and hand out masks to the school safety agents, and they'd say, is that the borough president? Or I would go to NYPD and knock on doors and hand them masks and give them tips on how to survive coronavirus or deliver food to hospitals or be at some of the senior locations, give food. It was substantive because I was giving supplies to the front line, but it was also symbolic.
Right.
You know, here your general is is with you in this battle. And that was important. So I said, instead of going home, coming back, going home, coming back, let me just get a couple of shorts, some underwears, some toothpaste, get a little mattress, and just get my little teddy bear and my little stuffed dragon and my Jets football. And let me just, do it here at Borough Hall, man. I had my gym, had my NutriBullet, my Ninja, all of my food. And I just said, you know what, we're going to do it here, man. So it's been and the real vision is that we cycled to another place in coronavirus, and then we hit this another place with the marches. Right. And a lot of people don't remember those first few days, that Friday, that Saturday, there was some real stuff going on. Yeah. When I was down at the Barclays Center, when I was driving, when I went to Lafayette and I saw a car burning, and then I get a call from the police department, the counterterrorism, to tell me about an element that was trying to burn down the city. So I had to be on the ground in a real way.
What's going on in your head when you, especially let's talk about those first couple days of those protests that then went south, especially right over here at Barclays. What's going on in your head when you hear counterterrorism, NYPD calls you, this is happening, you see the videos? I mean, how do you stay calm and, because the reality is people like you, especially, they make calm, calculated decisions, right? But in chaotic times, how do you gauge that? What's going on through your head?
Friday and Saturday was an OS moment for me. I was like, NASA, we got a problem. Friday and Saturday, because there was an energy, a righteous energy of young people saying, we want change in policing. But there was an element that was attempting to hijack that. Right. And they were bad people. They were anarchists. They knew how to make Molotov cocktails. They were strategic in having rocks in their backpacks. They were deployed to really create madness. Now, imagine one of them having a gun and shoot at the police from the crowd. Now we have all these innocent people. So it was a time bomb. And so we were successful in getting to people like Anthony Beckford, the head of Black Lives Matter, Brooklyn. I called some of my 100 Blacks in law enforcement guys that were with me. I told them what was going on. They started going to the rallies. We started instructing some of the organizers of what to look for on how to police themselves to get these people out. And so there was a behind the scene, a well-organized campaign to say, we got to keep this peaceful.
Now, a couple weeks ago, I don't know if you're familiar with her, Shavonna Newsom.
Yes, yes.
For people that don't know, co-founder of Black Lives Matter Greater New York City. And, she was talking about this organization, and, it's really, it's super interesting when you get down in the weeds of it. But how much, communication is there between your office and your staff and kind of like the local government and, the leaders of the Black Lives Matter movement, and when you guys are organizing the protests?
And that's extremely important. I have been relegated, like any great athlete, they know when to get out of the ring and allow the next athlete to take their place. I'm the coach now. I don't have the legs anymore. Yeah. And so the most important relationship I can do right now is to go to the Anthony Beckfords, the Hawk Newsons, and others, and say, here's the experience I have for over 20 plus years in policing, where the chokeholds of reform is located. But this is your movement. Mm-hmm. This is your movement. This is a young people movement. They need to not disengage the relationship with their coach. The coach may be a mentor, maybe their elders, maybe a family member. It may be Dr. King's children. They should still be the advisors. And so all I do with the organizers of this, when they need me, they will call and say, can you give me some input on this? Mm-hmm. The police department say they're going to do this. Does this make sense? Other than that, my ass is out of the way.
We're going to take just a really quick break because I want to talk about my sponsor, NanoCraft CBD. I'm very excited to announce my partnership with them to all my listeners. And you've probably heard of all the benefits of CBD. Millions of people are using it to manage their anxiety, recover faster, improve their mental focus, and even get deeper sleep. It's pretty remarkable how diverse the benefits can be for some folks. My partners at NanoCraft CBD are one of the top brands in the industry, and they are actually the #1 CBD for athletes. They focus on making unique hemp-based formulas that combine CBD with other nutrients and superfoods like B12, ashwagandha, turmeric, nitric oxide, caffeine, and more to give athletes and everyday folks an edge in their work and life. They've been generous enough to give our listeners 20% off with the code Felix, that's Felix, and they'll throw in a free CBD lip balm if you use that code Felix at nanocraftcbd.com. They even sent the Brooklyn Borough President a goodie bag full of lots of actually really great stuff if you or your staff or someone at home wants to take a try. So check them out. I want to get back into it.
I'm not giving that to my staff. That's my own CBD oil. And if they
got the CBD oil, they have the for if you're ever having some muscle pain, there's like a little rub.
I'm very familiar with it. And tell them if they have any weed around the house, don't feel bad about that too.
Well, listening, send it over to the Borough President. So for me, kind of getting into the policing thing, people who know your background, 22 years in the NYPD. What's that been like for you? To talk about your past experiences. I'm sure you still have a lot of friends, you still have a lot of people that you know in that world. To see, officers with really poor conduct, obviously, but also there's a lot of hatred towards policing all across the country, and especially against the NYPD these days. So I just want to kind of gauge where you're at, what the conversations are like between you and perhaps former other cops, perhaps current cops, and how you assess this situation.
And it's so important to know how I got here. And it goes back to 1975 when I was arrested as a young man. My brother and we were beat bad by police officers. And I hated police officers. My grades slipped. I became a real angry young man, and it was just obvious. I remember my mother say that, Eric, you went from a loving child to this child that is full of rage, because my innocence was taken from me inside a place that was supposed to be a symbol of protection. And it wasn't until later when Arthur Miller was killed that, I got involved in an organization called National Black United Front, and I started fighting against police abuse. Reverend Herbert Daughtry was the leader of the organization. And then a young man named Randolph Evans was killed. And the leaders of the movement came to 13 of us and told us they wanted us to go inside and fight against police abuse. They said, we can't continue to fight outside. You guys have to go inside. And I was like, man, you must be on crack or something. I'm not trying to go in the police department. But I had so much respect for them that I went in and we fought every day. When I got into the department, Eleanor Bumpus was shot and killed by Officer Sullivan. And so I can benchmark my life by those interactions. Cliffy Glover, 10-year-old shot in South Jamaica, Queens, around the corner from me, case after case after case. And so when I went into the department, I went in with an assignment and a mission. And I was true to that mission for 20 plus years. We started 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. There was a gentleman named Randy Credico that I used to march with every evening at Rockefeller Plaza to turn around the Rockefeller drug laws. And I used to march with him, and little did I know I was going to go become a state senator and was co-sponsored the bill that repealed the Rockefeller drug laws. But it was this duality that exists. During the day, I would march with Miss Diallo after her son was shot and killed, shot at 40 times. And then in the evening, I put on a uniform and go protect marches. And, people used to yell, call me Uncle Tom, and you're a traitor and what have you. But I knew they didn't dislike me, the person, because I was just marching next to them. The symbol of the uniform is what they disliked. And today I had a press conference with the Council of Retired Police Association, African-American organization. These were heroes. These black and brown law enforcement officers were fighting from within. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, there's a lot of tension, as you're seeing a lot, but I understand where the pain is coming from. So none of this is personal. It's about how do we get this done?
Do you believe that one day people, we will get to a point where young black men in particular will not, and women of course, but will not fear the police? That one day we can truly rebuild this from the ground up so that there will be trust again within those communities and our law enforcement?
Heck yes. Yes. First of all, we never had trust. The DNA
Right.
of policing is the DNA of racism. The early police in the South were used to capture runaway slaves. Here in the North, it was used to protect property of the rich. So the DNA, just like my skin tone is part of my DNA, just like my hairstyle when I used to have hair, all of that is part of I'm hardwired for certain things. Policing is hardwired to be racist. And so what we have to do now, build a new system of policing. Mm-hmm. That is what I know we can do. We can change the concept of public safety and not be this reactive model, but a proactive way of preventing crime. What do I mean? Rikers Island, 40 to 50% of the men and women on Rikers Island are dyslexic. 55% learning disability. 80% don't have a high school diploma or equivalency diploma. So if we take the money in the police department, the $1 billion in the last 4 years in our budget, use that money to go after giving people real dyslexic training and education so they can become productive citizens, they don't all of a sudden sit in the classroom and say, hey, I can't learn and now I'm going to hang on the corner, sling drugs, and now I'm going to go do a stick-up or robbery. So the goal is not to continue to try to close Rikers Island, the building. We need to start closing the pipeline so we won't need a Rikers Island. That is what the call is about right now. And when we redefine policing, use cure violence, use restorative justice, have community-based interactions when someone does minor offenses. How do you resolve it within the community? Teaching communications. It blows my mind that we don't know how to communicate.
Yeah, it's true.
It's not, I'm gonna wait till you finish a sentence so I can tell you how wrong you are. And let me tell you something. A lot of people talk about the madness of Trump, which is madness, but we got a lot of nasty people walking around every day.
Oh, yeah.
Go to Twitter.
Oh, my God. I mean, you talk about not even listening to each other. They don't even read each other at this point. It's like, they don't even read it's crazy. But, there's something else that I heard you say in a recent interview that I thought was really interesting. And I want you, for the people that haven't heard this idea, I want you to elaborate. You said people are feeling black right now.
Right.
You said from coronavirus and lack of healthcare is making people feel black. Like what's going on is making people feel black. And I'll let you kind of explain that. Right. And I thought it was the way I interpreted was really powerful and interesting. But we just take it away and kind of explain what you meant.
So I remember when Trump was elected and I was with my staff and I looked at the faces of the people who all of a sudden out of nowhere felt as though life was robbed and snatched from them. And I said to my staff, something different is happening in America. And what happened immediately after? The Me Too movement. Yeah. Women didn't start being sexually harassed post-Trump. Yeah. So all of a sudden, that anger turned into purpose. Then coronavirus came. I started going to food pantries, and I started to see young whites on the line getting food and saying, I never thought I would be here in this country asking for food. I started seeing them email me in the office saying, I can't pay my rent. I'm about to lose my apartment. I have an Ivy League degree and I can't get a job. I don't even know how to get health care. My family member is ill and I can't get health care. I can't even get education. The schools are closed down and my children are not being educated. The fears that Black people have had, all of a sudden, white people were saying, wait a minute, this is what y'all talking about.
Yeah.
So I can't breathe is not a new sentence. It didn't only happen in Minneapolis, 1,000 miles away. It happened right in Staten Island. The only difference from then and now is that all of a sudden, white folks who you see, look at the marches, large number of whites, you see now all of a sudden they saying, I know what it is to be Black.
Yeah. Do you feel like we're at a turning point?
It depends. It depends. If we turn this into some fad, I'm going to march today. If we turn this into, that, hey, since, we can't go to the bars, or we can't go out to hang out at the park and, what have you. So let's just go and march. Then it's all bull.
Yeah.
But if Black Lives Matter, then you know what? Go to that black cafe who you've been ignoring all this time and only go into a cafe that's owned by someone white.
Mm-hmm.
Go to a black doctor, a black dentist, patronize a black business. And hey, check this out. Go into our schools that have been segregated. You have all white classrooms hidden behind gifted programs. Demand that you're going to integrate these schools. Go to these safety net hospitals. So if this is real, then it can't be that, hey, I'm just marching. March next to someone that doesn't look like you and engage and develop a relationship. That is when it's real. But if all we're doing is marching because it's cool and you can, put on your Facebook or your Twitter or your Instagram that, hey, I was in the march, Black lives really matter.
Yeah.
That's all a hustle.
Right. and from a legislative perspective, I know there's already been a little bit of movement there. Are there things that you're working on with your team and other legislators to get passed that would, from the top down in this system, at least see that change from a legal and law standpoint?
Yes. And there are very important places where we can make real impact because correct policing is a puzzle, and there are many pieces to the puzzle. If you just put one piece on the board, you don't have the whole picture. And so the pieces must connect together. 50A, banning the chokehold, reallocation of money. All of those pieces must go together in order for us to have the right piece to policing. What do I mean? I spoke with the mayor last week, and I said, Mayor, listen, one of the most important things you could do now is to allow local communities to choose their precinct commanders. A precinct commander is a miniature oligarch. He controls a geographical piece of real estate throughout the city. Our city is broken into precincts. And if you don't know who that precinct commander is, if you don't have a relationship with that precinct commander, he'll decide what businesses are going to stay open, who's going to be hit with citations, who gets a liquor license, what parades can happen, what blocks can have block parties. So what I said to the mayor, let's put together a small committee of community boards, precinct councils, local civic groups, and let them get 3 recommendations from the police commissioner, and they interview the precinct commander and say, before you get this command of our community, tell us what your vision is for our community. Now, here's where the other piece to the puzzle come to this. 50A, historically, the community could not see the record of that precinct commander. Now with 50A, they can say, let us see your record. Let's see how many CCRBs you had. Let's see how many disciplinary issues you had. The commander, Edelman, who was with the officer that pushed the girl to the ground, he was standing right beside him. He did nothing. That commander was the commander of the 73rd Precinct in Brownsville. He was ran out of Rockaway because the people didn't want him there. So the residents of Brownsville inherited a precinct commander with a checkered past, and they were never even able to ask him.
It's just a cycle. Yeah.
That's why now we got 50A. Now we do this new initiative. Now we can start local grassroots changing in policing.
Now, I'm also curious for you, being a former police officer, what do you say to the next we're going to eventually have a next generation of police. And, and you talk about you got insulted with the Uncle Toms and stuff like that. How do you convince this next generation to go into policing?
Did I write your questions?
No.
These are good questions,
Thank
man.
you.
Let me tell you, the biggest hustle, man. In slavery, the plantations' brutal right hand would cut the belly of an African-American woman while she was pregnant and take her baby out so all the other slaves would see what could happen to them. This is what is happening in policing. When Black doctors were not taking care of our grandmothers and grandfathers, from the pulpits to our organizations, we encourage Black and brown smarts, young people to become doctors. When they were not taking care of us in our schools, we encouraged Black and brown young people to become teachers. We encourage the Thurgood Marshalls to become lawyers to fight in the Supreme Court. We've always stated, whenever the institutions are not doing what they're supposed to do, as Black and brown people, you're supposed to go in and lead them to the right direction. The only institution that we have not done that with is law enforcement. And so think about it for a moment. When those cops beat me, they didn't beat me because I did something wrong. They said, we're going to send a message to you, Negro, that you would never want to be a cop. They played us. And so now when you get a young Black person that says to his mom and dad around the dinner table, one day I want to be a police commissioner. No, you don't. You would not be a sellout. You would not be a traitor. All of that would be fine. But when you go into the store and buy a loaf of bread and you pay those taxes, you're paying for that racist.
Right.
So how sick is it that we are telling our young people not to go into an industry that we're paying for, and the only people should be in that industry are those who are abusive? We got to change that narrative. There needs to be a national call to have Black and brown young people go into the police department, NAACP, the Urban League, every fraternity, every sorority, every preacher from their pulpits. If we want to change policing, then what Reverend Daughtry did with me, we must do to all of our young people. You must now, you that Eagle Scout who we saw grow up on our block, and you're intelligent and smart, young man, you need to become a precinct commander. You're that young girl that sat in our church and went to Howard University, and you're now part of the AKA of a sorority. We want you now to become a chief in the police department. We need to give these young people an assignment to go inside the police department and change it from within. If we don't do that, if we're only pushing from the outside and not in the inside, we're never going to get the transformation we're looking for.
Now, if I had told a young 15-year-old Eric Adams at that point that he would have served 22 years in the police department, what would he have said to me?
I would say, man, you out of your mind. You serving the police department. I remember the first day I got there, and then during a few weeks later, we were debating, arguing about Eleanor Bumpurs. They were trying to say it was justifiable for her to be shot. And I was arguing in our social science class. And one of the instructors said, you know what? You're not going to last. And I said to him, you know what? I know I'm not going to last. So, who's to know? Man makes plans, God laughs. Our destiny is something that's out of our control. And so I know that a young person of color who has been stopped, frisked, harassed, had his book bags dumped out, dehumanized in front of his young girlfriend. My son was in the store one day. His girlfriend went in the store. He was outside. The cops came and questioned him and started going through his pockets. And he says, my dad is the state senator. They said, so what? And she came out of the store. He's crying in front of her because he's just dehumanized. And I shared with them, son, they want you to hate cops, so you will never become a cop. Now, what are you going to do?
Now, to wrap things up, do you ever think about legacy? I mean, hopefully we have so many more long years of healthy life. But do you ever think about, police officer, New York State Senator, Brooklyn Borough President? We don't know what the future holds. But, when it's all said and done, how do you hope Eric Adams is remembered?
I thought my legacy was going to be policing. I thought that the mark I made, my legislation abandoned the database of stop and frisk around stopping women from being handcuffed when they're arrested and they're pregnant, the Rockefeller drug laws reform. I thought policing was my legacy. And I know now what my legacy is going to be. My legacy is health.
Oh.
My legacy, and who would have thought? I'm not a doctor. But when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes 4 years ago, I lost my sight in my left eye. I was losing my right. Doctor said, you're going to be blind in a year, Eric, the way it looks. She said, you're actually legally blind now. I had permanent nerve damage in my hands and feet. And I told this story often that was going to lead to amputation. Had an ulcer, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. My body was a mess. I looked okay physically, but I should have taken an internal selfie to see that my body was breaking down. And I went to 5 experts. They all told me that, Eric, there's nothing could happen. It's in your DNA. Your mother's diabetic. This is just the way it is. And it wasn't until I decided to do something scientific. I went to Google and Googled reversing diabetes. And all this information came up. If I would have typed living with diabetes, I would have gone down a different search path. That's why it's so important. Words are power. Mm-hmm. And I typed reversing diabetes, and all of this information came up. And out of that, I was able to find what a whole food plant-based diet was able to do. And within 3 weeks, my vision came back.
Wow.
Within 3 months, my nerve damage went away, my ulcer went away, my blood pressure normalized, dropped 35 pounds. You know, my body's tight. I don't have a six-pack, I have a case.
Well, let me tell you, I think your legacy will be far more than just health. I want to thank you for taking the time, and you know, as someone who, you know, I'm 20, all my life I've grown up in Brooklyn. To have someone like you at the helm during, just in general, but especially during crises, and to hear your words and to hear your real presence, at least you know, today, it really means the world. And you know, I'm excited. Again, we're only living in the present. We don't know what the future holds, but it's people like you that, for me, at least reassure me that this world might be okay.
It is.
So thank you,
Thank you,
Borough President Adams, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you for having me. Take care.